You know, no one ever calls out the mockers for being wrong. They're content to just continue to divide at a time when we need to be united. America, I'm begging you, we must unite now. History is beginning to repeat itself. In Europe, there is a very strong radical movement towards just erasing all religion. They are seeking to stamp out what little religious influence remains at all in the EU. An archbishop explained, he said, quote, "There's a movement in the European Union that wants total religious neutrality and can't accept our Christian traditions." Europe is steeped in religious history, but most of it is bad. The design of the EU flag, believe it or not, was inspired by the biblical image from the book of Revelation. You know, the end of days part of the book that depicted a woman clothed in the sun and the crown of 12 stars on her head. Well, I'm hoping we're not going to see that part of that book come to real life at a theater near you. But when you start stamping out God and you start worshiping false gods, you're in trouble. In the build-up to World War II, the same movement happened. It happened in Europe, and it happened here. It was the state competing with religion as the moral authority, and eventually nudge came to push and shove came to shoot. That's the way it works. Here in Russia, Stalin. He imprisoned thousands of religious leaders while the churches were closed. Nearly 40,000 Christian churches were closed. 25,000 mosques were closed down and converted into theaters and schools and warehouses. Church bells were melted down for scrap metal. By 1939, only 1 in 40 churches were still functioning as a church. He replaced the churches with icons, pictures, statues, propaganda of himself. Children were taught that Stalin was the wisest of the age. We actually have a publication upstairs at the League of Militant Atheists, which he established in 1924. This is a flyer from it. 9 years later, they had 5.5 million members. Prior to World War II, Hitler did the same thing. He did it in Germany. So you had the communists, and then you had the other competing idea, the National Socialist. We were doing freedom. But they did communism and National Socialism. And the Nazis promoted a positive Christianity. They claimed it would restore Christian morality because it had fallen into a sinkhole. Well, privately, he despised Christianity. In his writings, he talked about how Christianity and National Socialism weren't compatible. He said, "We'll see to it that the churches can't spread abroad teachings in conflict with the interest of the state." In Hitler's ministers for religious affairs said this positive Christianity was not dependent on faith in Christ, but rather faith in the Nazi Party. Quote, "The Fuhrer is the herald of a new revelation." They were trying to make the churches, hear me carefully, National Socialists tried to make the churches an instrument of Nazi policy. So he attacked the German Catholic churches with propaganda, calling them disloyal, havens of corruption. People were forced to answer to the authorities on why they had betrayed the regime. Any of this sound anything? By 1939, more than 10,000 Catholic schools had been closed. The kids had to go to public school, the Nazi public schools. It was mass secularism, a total rejection of God. And I find it interesting, first of all, back to the flag in Europe, that there are 12 tribes of Israel, 12 little stars on their flag. And how many times have we seen the yellow star used before? How many times have we seen them sewn onto people's clothing? I fear, unfortunately, America, we may see them again. We have the same problems that infected the world back at the turn of the century. Unfortunately, it's happening here too. God is being driven out of the public square. God is openly mocked, and hedonism and darkness is being embraced. Let me give you the easy ones. Charlie Sheen berated his employer, bragged about his rampant drug use, treated women like meat, rewarded brand new comedy show, celebrates all of his quirky debauchery. Kim Kardashian, famous, intentionally whoring herself out of a videotape. That's what she did, a sex tape. Whoops, look who's famous now. She became more famous by dating the guy who said George W. Bush hates all black people, Kanye West. And then she became even more celebrated for being impregnated out of wedlock and bringing a child into a guaranteed disaster of a relationship. And then there's the good old Anthony Weiner. While taxpayers were paying his salary with their hard-earned money, he was tweeting pictures of his wiener to random women on Twitter. When caught, He went on a media tour, lied over and over again, accused everybody but himself, fiercely claiming innocence, playing the victim card. Now he's the front runner in the upcoming national or mayoral race in New York City. He might be the mayor of New York City. And quite honestly, America, those are the easy ones. I pick the hits that your friends, who get their news from Entertainment Tonight, I tried to pick the ones that they would understand. But if you just scratch just below the surface, you and I both know evil is running amok in our country and all over the globe. A society that continues to accept and applaud wrongdoing will in the end destroy itself from within. It must. It becomes a virus to nature's laws. And that's what's happening. The line between right and wrong has blurred. We can't even see things now. We can't even see that, the administration sending weapons and then joining forces with cannibals in Syria might be a bad idea. We can't see that all men have rights. All men have rights to different opinions. You don't have to agree with me. I have a right to say it. And I shouldn't be spied on for saying it. Progressives have an advanced society. You see, they have distanced us from ourselves, our brothers, our sisters, our neighbors, our Constitution, our basic inalienable rights, and most importantly, they have distanced us from God